Good evening and welcome to Sport at Prime. Let's start tonight with Springbok and Bulls star Warrick Gelant, who's told Newzroom Afrika that he set up a podcast with fellow athletes to help share positive messages during the COVID-19 pandemic. The utility backline player, who's been waiting patiently for rugby to return, says Jake White is perfectly qualified to take the reins at Loftus versveld. This is a very difficult time for many people. Well, in fact, for some people, because according to you, the idea of lockdown is one that you seem to be not too foreign with. In fact, you seem to be adapting and adopting this theory of lockdown quite well. Tell us how you've been achieving that.
No, I think this is very good for me. Like I said, now it's basically so normal for me. I think the biggest thing for us as human beings now is, like we actually get drawn so close to how humanity is supposed to be. And I think that's the biggest challenge, because most of us were so far off in that regard that we don't know how humanity looks like. Suddenly you have your family dinners again. Suddenly you have, all those stuff that you would teach when you were little. I think that is the nice part for us. That's a big part that we can fix in this pandemic, yeah.
Now, you haven't had a chance to be playing any rugby recently, but you certainly have been keeping yourself quite busy with the Breaking Chains podcast. I see this as an opportunity to get into the industry of broadcasting, perhaps when you do decide to hang up your boots. Tell me a bit about this podcast and what is it exactly that you are hoping to achieve in doing this?
Yeah, I think, the name itself says it all. It is breaking the chains, like I said, a lot of us, especially, I think, when we look back and we see and we look at the stuff that we know now, we can see, yes, there's so much that we didn't know when we were 14, 15, 16, 17. I mean, when I signed my first contract, it was myself and my mom, which didn't know a lot about rugby. So in her, what she saw was, my child, this is an opportunity for you. That's the only thing she saw. But in terms of advice, she couldn't give me the advice of sign here because of this, sign there because of that. I didn't have that mentor, I didn't have that guidance, I didn't have that help. So breaking the chains is basically all of those stuff that the people don't know about the game itself. So breaking the chains is about because I'm speaking with some guys who's entrepreneurs at the moment. I'm speaking to guys who got an opportunity late. I speak to guys who had long-term career injuries that came back, they persevered. I spoke with some netball girls about the challenges in their sport. So it's all about breaking the chains, about being a mentor for the guys who doesn't know it, about the reality of the game itself. It's about knowing that sometimes you're going to go through a dip, or you're going to get an injury, or sometimes you feel like you perform but you don't get an opportunity, or they just pick the other guy ahead of you because maybe he's part of the coach's team or not. I think that is the stuff that we try to create on breaking the chains and give it out to the people, especially for the next generation, so that they know that they can be more than an athlete if they want to go into business while playing sport, or all of the stuff that actually happened in the game. Yeah.
Now, I've taken a look at some of the athletes that you've already spoken to on this podcast, and some of them are some pretty big names, and I imagine that there are some inspiring messages to come out of some of those athletes. I can imagine that, especially during a time like this, that South Africans, young kids in particular, who look to you guys as their heroes on the field while they don't have the opportunity to do that right now. I'm hoping that some of those athletes that you've spoken to have been able to deliver some inspiring messages during this difficult time.
Yeah, like you said, it's some big names, and the nice thing is I didn't have to ask them to make something up to tell the people. It's literally the guys that went through the same stuff. It's your Roscoe Speckman who made his Super Rugby debut at 30 years old. I mean, sometimes we feel like I'm second choice in my under 19 year or end of matric or all of those type of stuff. Then you feel like I'm second, I'm third choice. I mean, here's a special example of a phenomenal rugby player in Roscoe Speckman who made his Super Rugby career at the age of 30. I mean, this is the examples I can use. And like I say, it's some big names, but it's not some guy that made the stuff up. They literally went through it. Yeah.
Now, tell me, how have you been dealing with the idea of not necessarily a lockdown, but of rugby being put on ice for now? We see that there's a few developments taking place in Australasia. New Zealand are flirting with a New Zealand-only competition. Yesterday, in fact, we We spoke earlier this week about an Australian-only competition where they're looking at some options. We haven't heard much about a South African-only option just yet. Of course, we wait for government to give some better clearance on that. But it seems as if the rest of the rugby world is starting to slowly gear up. Are you hoping that much will be the same for the South African scene in due course?
I would like to hope so, but we also need to be realistic. I think for us, we need to realize that we all are human beings before we are athletes. I think that is the first thing. I mean, the countries you mentioned now is first world countries, which is they have a lot more resources to use and to capitalize on the situation. So, yeah, it's definitely an advantage for them, especially if they end lockdown, say, in 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, where we go into an international season where South Africa didn't play rugby in this time. It can be difficult, but there's some chats between the coaches in the broader group of the guys in terms of how you need to prepare yourself to the best of your ability in the difficult situation. It is out of our control, so we need to be the best that we can be in this situation.